All right, welcome everyone to your virtual seats here at Building a Better America, a small business resource community. Making sure you are in the right place for the show today. This is being brought to you by the U.S. Small Business Administration and Public-Private Strategies Institute. I want to quickly go over some housekeeping items. Please note, if you have questions, please type your questions into the Q&A. The chat function has been disabled. Also, the U.S. Small Business Administration does not endorse Public-Private Strategies Institute. Also, please note this session is being live streamed and recorded. And a very important piece of information, please do not share any personally identifiable information such as your social security number or anything else that is specific to you. We're not able to deal with specific things that you might have concerns about that are personal or otherwise specific to you. So please keep that stuff, tied away in the vault of your mind. Otherwise, we're going to get started in just a moment. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Miss Renee Johnson. Renee Johnson, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Johnson, and I am a senior advisor here at Public-Private Strategies Institute. We're so excited to have you here today joining us for our webinar, which is Building a Better America, a small business resource community. This series is brought to you by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And today we are discussing the bipartisan infrastructure law, broadband access and equity, and its impact on small businesses. So let's go on to that next slide. As a quick overview for what we're going to discuss today, Building a Better America, today's goal is to connect small businesses with critical resources and information, including how the bipartisan infrastructure law, the American Rescue Plan, and Made in America may provide opportunities to help your businesses thrive. These briefings, which is a part of a series that's been going on since early March of this year, are able for you to take steps for you to learn to take advantage of existing programs, updates regarding programs and recent policy announcements, as well as discussion on important and timely policy issues, including paid leave, tax credits, access to affordable childcare, hiring and retaining workers, and healthcare access and cost as well. And with that, we're going to the next slide. I'm so excited to introduce to you our first speaker for today, who is Sarah Morris, who joins us from NTIA as a senior advisor, and she joined in March of 2022. She was previously the director of the New America's Open Technology Institute, where she led OTI strategy management and advocacy. Prior to her role as director, she led the organization's efforts on a broad portfolio of issues, including broadband access and adoption of online customer protections and preserving the open internet. Her work on these issues has been widely quoted in a number of national publications, and she has appeared as an expert on radio and television outlets throughout the country. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me, Renee. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to talk to you all about the work that NTIA is doing to stand up 4 grant programs that were passed as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law that Renee just mentioned. So I have just a quick deck here. Really, there's just 2 slides that I'm going to cover, and then we'll have a couple of questions with Renee. So next slide, please. So I mentioned 4 programs. Actually, 1 program was existing. Our tribal program, Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, has been in existence, and the bipartisan infrastructure law provided a top-off to that program, a much-needed top-off to ensure that tribal communities across the country are getting access to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet. But then we also are standing up 3 new programs, and this is what I and my colleagues spend all of our days working on right now. These 3 programs are the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, or BEAD. Broadband Equity Access and Deployment is a mouthful. So this is the one program that my comms team lets me use an acronym for. So we call it the BEAD program. This program is a formula-based grant program for U.S. states and territories, where we give the states and territories a big block of money, a portion of this $42.45 billion. They administer competitive grant programs within that state to ensure that everyone throughout their state is getting access by the end of the program's life cycle to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet. And we are very clear when my boss, the assistant secretary and NTIA administrator, talks about this program. When we say connect everyone, we mean everyone. And we're going to be working hand in hand with states to make sure that the robust connectivity makes it to everyone in the country. You'll notice that the second letter of BEAD stands for equity. Equity runs, the need to ensure equitable outcomes runs throughout all of the programs that all of the broadband programs that we're running at NTIA, but we also have a dedicated program for digital equity. This actually, it has three components. A planning grant program that we just received applications for from states, territories, and tribes. That will give those entities resources to develop a digital equity plan, which, as it turns out, is also a requirement for the work that that states have to do for their BEAD program as well. So you get to use the DE planning grant program to build your digital equity plan for BEAD. And then there will be a capacity program, and that's where states and territories who participated in the planning grant process are able to apply for an additional surge of funds to actually implement those programs within the states. And then finally, there's a competitive grant process that is open up to a wider set of eligible entities. That'll be the third program that we stand up in digital equity to continue to drill forward on these important equity outcomes. I mentioned the Tribal Connectivity Program. It's a more established program within NTIA, and we're excited to have the influx of funds to help get more folks connected in more tribes throughout the country. And finally, we have a middle mile program. We often think of this as our force multiplier program, where we are ensuring that we are not just building last mile networks to connect people at home, but that we're building a robust network, a robust set of networks throughout the country. You can think of these like the interstate system or highways to get lots of connectivity into communities at an affordable and competitive way. We're not the only agency in town doing this important work. The FCC has $14 billion for its Affordable Connectivity Program, which was designed to provide a subsidy for low-income households to ensure that they can access affordable internet. We're in close partnership with the FCC on making sure we get people signed up for ACP. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has another $2 billion. There's our colleagues at Treasury also have programs that they're standing up. And then we have another set of funding for private equity bonds at the state and local government level. So next slide. So I mentioned that we just had a deadline for our digital equity planning grants. We actually had two deadlines. The initial letters of intent deadline for states to submit their letters of intent for the BEAD program passed in July as well. And we are thrilled to be able to report back that every state and every territory submitted a letter of intent for the BEAD program and an application for the digital equity planning grant program. And I think this just underscores the recognition that states are having that this is critical to the success of the economic success within their states. And so we're really excited to kick off these partnerships and move forward to get this connectivity out into the world. So I will stop there. The next slide, you'll all have a copy of this. This has some resources for us, which we'll also discuss in the Q&A, I think, too.
Wow, thank you, Sarah. This is great information. And I'm really just excited to talk with you more about what NTIA is doing. But first, can you tell us more about your role at NTIA, what you and your team are responsible for as department inside of the Department of Commerce? Because I think some people may be confused, wait, are you a separate entity or are you part of Commerce? How does that all work?
Yeah, so the Department of Commerce is a huge department within the federal government that houses lots of different federal programs and agencies. NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, is an entity that is focused on telecommunications and information policy issues. We were created to be an advisor to the president on telecommunications and communication and information policy issues. And so we do lots of work. We manage we manage federal non-commercial spectrum, which is not in my wheelhouse. We coordinate with other parts of the administration on filings at the FCC, for example. And then so we have ahead of NTIA, our administrator, Alan Davidson, who serves in an assistant secretary role within the agency, within the department. And I serve as a senior advisor to Assistant Secretary Davidson. So my portfolio includes broadband, includes some other things too. It's quite big, but I spend most of my day working with our incredible team within NTIA to stand up these grant programs and make sure they're a success, and to make sure that we're building partnerships at the state and local level that allow these programs to ultimately be successful. Because this is not going to be successful with a top-down approach coming out of Washington, D.C. These are programs that we have to build up from the ground up and with partnerships from the ground up.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think that helps people understand like what the intersectionality is between the agency and sort of like the department, if you will. And it sounds like NTIA is one of those agencies that a lot of people may not have heard of, or they've like heard the acronym, but they don't know what it means. What is NTIA responsible when it comes to the work of people who are here, you know, like the small business owners? Like, how does that interface with their everyday life?
I mean, so we are a grant making entity. We have, and we actually, with the CHIPS Act that just passed, got even more money to stand up grants for. So we're, yes, very excited. It's a very busy time. I expect that people will start seeing much more of NTIA than they maybe have in the past. We were kind of a quiet agency for a few years. But I think most relevant for the folks on this call is that we're about to surge a bunch of money into the states to ensure that that people have connectivity to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's great to know that people are able to access you all for grant opportunities, because I know a lot of these small business owners are looking for opportunities to connect, find resources so that their businesses can thrive. Let's just switch gears a little bit, because I know a lot of people are like, well, especially like we're on a webinar right now, and there might be people who are having Wi-Fi issues. There might be people who are like, the audio doesn't work for me, because that happens to me all the time. Why is broadband important to small businesses? And like, are there places that don't have access to broadband, and why do we even have that problem?
Yeah, I mean, the why do we have this problem is a long one, a long answer. But I think, you know, what we saw, particularly as many folks were working at home throughout the pandemic, there is no, and this is a debate we just had recently within our team. Like, do we talk about the digital economy, or is the economy just digital now? And I think it's the latter, right? Like, we used to say like, oh, there was the economy, capital E, and then there was the digital economy. And now connectivity and internet access is an inescapable part of, you know, just living day to day in this country and succeeding economically as a small business, as individuals. And so, you know, I think it's great that Congress, the bipartisan group in Congress, recognized the importance there and really committed to investing a surge of capacity to really address this problem. And I think this will really make the difference for small businesses in these communities. And I think it's hard to even imagine how transformative this can be, to watch a community go from being unconnected. And we see this, we go out into communities month after month, week after week, and watching them go from unconnected, we see them unconnected, underconnected. They're still using really challenging communications tools to get online, and moving them to connected to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet is something that I think will be absolutely transformative and create a baseline of excellence for everyone in the country.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, with that, creating these opportunities, there are business owners who want to like hop on it, figure out how to get connected with these grant opportunities. So with the passage of the bill, with CHIPS, how can business owners who are watching today learn more about these opportunities for contracts in order to help build our country's broadband?
Yep. And so on the last slide in the short deck that I shared, there is there's some links to websites or website names there. Internetforall.gov is our one-stop shop for all of your bipartisan infrastructure law needs, not just for NTIA. We have lots of resources from the FCC and Treasury there as well, and our other interagency partners there as well. And I will say, we really, someone I think asked in the Q&A, like, who are the eligible entities here? States are the eligible entities for the BEAD formula block grants, but they'll be administering, they're going to be standing up programs within the states, and there's going to be lots of ample opportunities for folks to participate. And also, we made sure to include in the BEAD program very aggressive state and local coordination requirements. So we want the states to be on the ground throughout the states in their communities, talking to you all when they stand up their state grant programs to make sure they're doing it to meet your needs.
Wow, that's so amazing. Sarah, you gave us a lot of great information. And just so everybody knows, I see questions coming in the Q&A. Yes, you will get a copy of this presentation if you registered with us like before the webinar, got a link. So you will get an email. So you will have a copy of the slide deck. So you have a copy of all of Sarah's slides, as well as this is on Facebook Live right now. So it will stay there. It'll be on the SBA page, as well as Public-Private Strategies Institute page. So you can continue to see all this amazing information that Sarah has just dropped down this knowledge on us so that you can access it for your business. But Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure we will have you back because there's a lot of things that are just evolving within this broadband space and more opportunities for our business owners to connect.
Thanks so much, Renee. Thank
you. Now we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk to Terry Billups, who is the acting director of the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Rural Affairs. Terry Billups is the acting director and has been in this role since mid-2021. Terry joined the federal government in 2009 after leaving the private industry. And since moving to the public sector, Terry has held various positions at the SBA and within the Department of Defense, Army Contracting Command, and the Army Ground Vehicle System Center. That's a mouthful, say that 10 times fast. Her experience includes global and government contracting, project programming management, lender relations, and economic development. Growing up in Appalachian, Pennsylvania, and through her many travels, Terry has experienced firsthand the challenges facing rural America, which inspires her to make a difference in these underserved areas. And with that, I'm so excited to introduce to you, Terry.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Renee, for that introduction. I'd first like to take a minute and thank the Public and Private Strategies Institute for inviting SBA to participate in today's Building a Better America discussion. And it's also a pleasure to be presenting alongside our partners over at NTIA. So, Sarah, thank you for your presentation and for going first. Today's discussion is so important as we talk about infrastructure, particularly broadband infrastructure. And as most of you probably already know, SBA's mission hasn't changed since its inception back in 1953. The agency was created to aid, counsel, assist, and protect the interests of small businesses in an effort to preserve free competitive enterprise and to maintain the strength of our economy. And as we all know, that mission hasn't changed. If anything, it's even more important today. Under the leadership of our administrator, who's the 27th administrator of the SBA, Administrator Isabella Casillas Guzman, SBA serves 32.5 million small businesses. So we have a huge task as an agency, and under her leadership, we work diligently every day. And as most of you know, through the pandemic, SBA became well known for the work that we do, which is wonderful. And we, again, still exist for that same purpose, which is really to provide small businesses the assistance they need to help them with technical assistance, lending programs, government contracting, and most importantly, or equally important, I should say maybe, is disaster recovery. And really, I like to think that the work that we do every day at SBA really does help small businesses make their American dream of being a business owner a reality. And I always say that it's so nice to work for an agency in a position where we're so tied to what we do. And I can vouch for all of the people I know within the agency, that we really are passionate about the work we do. It's more than just a job. It really is a mission. And as most of you probably have experienced, if you've dealt with SBA, the work that we do is critical. We often are the first ones showing up whenever there's a natural disaster. So not only do we meet small businesses in their time of need at a critical time if there's been some sort of disaster, but also whenever they are having some sort of challenge and need some business advice. The other thing I wanted to mention is that about 60 million Americans, or 1 in 5, live in rural America. A lot of people don't hear that statistic or really stop to think about it and the importance of rural small businesses to our economy. When you look at the fact that most of our nation is rural, if you were to look at a map, then you start to understand not only is there a lot of geography to cover, but there's also a huge population that also tends to go unserved. I mean, we think of the resources that are available often within an urban area, and there's usually a lot to select from. However, when you get in remote and rural areas, often there is nothing. I mean, there's the small communities that these small businesses support, but there's often not a lot of assistance. And that's where SBA comes in, and we strive every day not only to offer assistance through our network of resource providers, but also to continually keep an eye on what's going on in these communities, what the challenges are. And as it relates to infrastructure, now that we have a lot of infrastructure spending going in, is to make sure that SBA advocates for the small business communities so that they can have the resources and infrastructure they need to be able to do business and strengthen their business, thus building their local economies and also hopefully creating jobs. So with that, I'll let Renee, we'll bounce back to you. And I know you have some questions for me.
I do, and the chat is going crazy. Well, not the chat, the Q&A. So we're gonna just kind of like ask a couple of questions here. So your role at the U.S. Small Business Administration, and the work is in supporting small business in America, and particularly rural areas. Can you explain a little bit more about like how you connect to those communities? Is it through outreach, webinars, especially since we're in this, hybrid of virtual in-person event times, and like what kind of resources are there available for those business owners directly?
Thank you for that, Renee. So in my role, I'm one person. So when I look at my team of me, I often think like, oh my, what a challenge. But I'm happy to say that it's really not just me. I may be the person in the forefront of working with rural America, but luckily we are supported by a network of 68 district offices located throughout the US and our territories. And I always think of it as sort of like a spider web. When you look at that district office and then you look at the network of resource partners that are in the local areas, our reach spans far and wide. So luckily you have that district office from SBA, which is, sort of the central. And then you have our resources, which are small business development centers. We have a network of SCORE volunteer mentors. We have veteran business outreach centers, women's business centers, and community navigators, all of which are available at a grassroots level to support those local economies. So they know the needs locally. So I work with those district offices in our 10 regions throughout the US. And I really look at it through that rural lens and make sure that things that are happening nationally or regionally, that we're having a discussion about it. And conversely, whenever things are happening at a grassroots level, that I'm aware of what's happening there. So we have internally to SBA a Rural Advisory Council, and we meet routinely, and we talk about things that are going on. We share information across the country so that, you know, things that may happen in one part of rural America that may impact everyone eventually, that we can talk about that and try to align it with the programs we have. And if there's any gaps identified, then, you know, we sort of think about it and reach out to our other partners and resources that we have available and try to fill those gaps. And I'd like to say that we also leverage our federal partners, and you know, there's a lot of different federal agencies, and I mentioned earlier, you know, that SBA works with NTIA on the broadband piece of it. We also work with a variety of other partners depending on what the challenge is. So when I look at my work, I always think of myself as that rural interconnector. So not only do I, from a headquarters perspective, represent the field. So the field offices are the district offices. So if I confuse everyone, I'll try to catch myself and sort of clarify. But I serve as sort of the voice for rural at the headquarters level. And then I interconnect and take all of those individual voices from the constituency that, you know, reach out to their partners locally, and then that information comes back. So it's that information sharing. And then as advocates for small business, we also have the ability to bring up whatever those concerns or issues are and put them in the forefront and work on a whole of government approach to really try to come up with solutions to those problems.
Wow, that is a lot. And we thank you for the work that you do, because it is not for the faint of heart. So we appreciate it, and the dedication that you have. So we were talking about broadband as well. Want to know more about that, and particularly like what broadband access is like now, sort of like in rural communities, and how will broadband access help businesses in rural communities?
So I mentioned our partnership with NTIA along with other federal agencies. And of course, I always say they're the ones that really have, I'll call it the technical expertise when it comes to areas of coverage and that kind of things. And I think of SBA's role in that is really to be that face of the small business and to make sure that we understand what those needs are from a local level. So what SBA's been doing as part of that conversation is really making sure that our district offices and our resource partners are collecting that information and sharing that information amongst themselves and back to headquarters, so that that again can be conveyed to our other federal partners who have that scientific expertise. And then also, as the funding comes down to the states, we're making sure that all of our district offices are properly aligned with their state coordinators, so that now you have this local federal SBA connection to that state person, or it could be a department even, that's actually going to be rolling out that funding. And part of that conversation is, number one, just to let them know, like, hey, you know, these are some of the things we've heard, share that information, make sure that, you know, the voices of that individual small business are getting heard at that state level or even federal level, but also to ensure that if there are resources that can't be filled, that again, we're trying to do, you know, some sort of a gap analysis on an informal way, and making sure that if we need to bring new partners to the table, that we can do that. But really that reliance on our district offices and our regional administrators to really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on and make sure that we have that very clean communication locally to address those needs. That's really, I think, the primary role of SBA. And then also, once that infrastructure is rolled out, or as it's being rolled out, is to make sure that from a contracting perspective, our small business community has access to any contracts that are coming out. So, you know, in the event that the states are going to advertise something, that's something that we can share, you know, through our network. And then also, hopefully just make sure that everyone has that awareness of opportunities for state, federal, local contracts. And through our business opportunity specialists at the local level, they too have a heavy lift, and they work with our portfolio of 8A businesses to make sure that they're aware of any government contracting opportunities. And then also, it's really important for us to make sure that we understand if there are needs that we can help put our small businesses in the forefront to say, hey, we have small businesses here that can fulfill that need.
Wow, that is amazing. You gave us a lot of great information, and I know people are like, whoa, what, how do I get connected? So one, yes, this webinar is being recorded. So if you registered, you will be getting a copy of this recording, as well as it's on Facebook Live on the SBA's page, as well as Public-Private Strategies Institute. So you can always review this amazing information download that Terry is giving as well. Terry, one last question for you. Where can people go for questions about SBA's work in their rural community? So like if someone is in a community that's kind of like, you know, lacking resources and opportunities, but want to make sure that their business is able to thrive and want to connect with the SBA, how can they locate in their rural community access to the SBA?
Yes, so it's www.sba.gov/local-assistance. If you get nothing else from the words that I've shared, remember that website or just sba.gov and go look for local assistance in the search. But we have a lot of resources available at that local level. And I use the word local loosely when I talk about rural, because local to someone who lives remotely could be a few hours away. But thankfully they're available, you know, by telephone, and sometimes we publish things in writing. So if you don't have access to broadband, or perhaps you have access but you don't subscribe, we want to be able to provide you communications in various formats. So if you go to local assistance or reach out, just if you have to, use the phone book and find your district office. They can also give you someone that's nearby that you can have a conversation with on the phone or in person, possibly. But we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have small business development centers. We have our veterans, and there's 62 small business development centers with 900 service centers. So we really do reach far and wide. And then our women's business centers, and I always like to caveat that with, we also serve men. We have 136 of those, and we just added 20 within the last probably 24 months. So we're expanding that network as well. So you can access a women's business center. Our community navigators could be possibly close to you. If you're a veteran, thank you for your service. And we also have veteran business outreach centers. And then we have 320 chapters of SCORE mentors. And again, they're available at no cost. And they also have expertise in various backgrounds. So they're always available to you as well. So we have a lot of resources. Just reach out to us. We're here to serve.
Well, thank you, Terry. And we'll make sure that everyone gets this information. And we truly appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Renee.
Thank you. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law. And just a quick overview. Again, these slides will be provided to you, so you'll be able to click on the links and actually, do more diving into them. So we're bringing up the slide deck now so that we can talk through a few of those items. So we're going to talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law, American Rescue Plan, and Made in America. And then we're going to go into how you can become a vaccination small business leader. And then we'll have a conversation with Mr. Mark Brady of Comcast. So let's get into this next slide real quick. So we can just skip on to this. So the bipartisan infrastructure law was signed by President Biden on November 15th, and it was a historic investment of $550 billion in new funds for large infrastructure projects, supply chains, broadband, and drinking water across the country. Basically, this is a little breakdown of more particularly of those funds, but this is, again, one of the largest investments since 1956 into our country's infrastructure. Next slide. The impact of this to small businesses is that it will virtually touch every part of Main Street, from Department of Transportation, which was awarded to $37 billion in federal contracts. We expect 700,000 jobs per year. And this will also help small business hire new employees and reach new customers. This is going to foster the development of Main Street small businesses in underserved communities. And you can go to the guidebook, which is build.gov, to learn more information, find contracts and opportunities to help your businesses thrive. Next slide, please. The American Rescue Plan also was signed into law and was passed in Congress in 2021. This focused on helping small businesses and consumers support communities that were struggling in the wake of COVID-19. And the plan provided critical support to these communities. It provided emergency funds for lending, investing to those hardest hit small businesses. And then also it distributed more than $360 billion in emergency funding to all levels of government, including tribal governments as well. And it helped hard hit public transit agencies avoid layoffs and service reductions, which made sure that we can ensure those who were working to help, during that time, use public transportation continuously without disruption as well. Next slide, please. Within the American Rescue Plan, the ARP created the Community Navigator pilot program, which you heard Sarah and both Terry discuss earlier. This is designed to reduce barriers to underrepresented and underserved entrepreneurs who often face hardships in accessing programs they need to recover, grow, or start their businesses. There was a total of $100 million and funding to 51 organizations across the country, and including Puerto Rico. And grantees will serve as hubs, and then centralized lead organizations throughout the country will incorporate it our spokes, and those are sort of those trusted local community organizations. And the goal of that is to connect small businesses to critical resources and assistance, which include financial assistance, access to capital, contracting and procurement, marketing, operations, business development, exporting, and industry-specific training. Let's go on to the next slide. And so the tax incentive is the paid leave tax incentive. And I know many of you are hearing now, there's a lot happening in Congress with additional tax incentives. So that's probably going to be another webinar that we'll talk about soon. But particularly for today, under the program, employers can offer up to 12 weeks of paid leave. Leave can be used to take care of a family member, maternity or paternity leave, or biological adoption, biological or adoption of children. In exchange for offering the leave, employers will receive as much as 25% tax credit for the amount of wages replaced. And this policy is targeted to hourly employees who would not otherwise have access to paid family leave. And employees who participate cannot make more than $72,000 per year. Do you want to check with your tax preparer or accountant in order to make sure that this incentive still works for you? Let's go into the next slide. The Made in America program was to ensure that the future of American workers is made in America. And it was launched a whole of government initiative to strengthen the use of federal procurement to support American manufacturing. You can go to the SBA website to find out more, but also there is a madeinamerica.gov website where you can learn more about the opportunities and how your businesses can become made in America. Let's go on to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about how you become a vaccination small business leader. So there's a few updates we all know. Unfortunately, the United States has experienced several waves of the pandemic since 2020. Omicron represented another step in the various evolution, and it's been one of the most contagious, and it's just increasing the amount of infections around the world over the past few months. Compared to prior waves of COVID-19, the United States, the Omicron wave has had a lower proportion of cases resulting in hospitalizations and deaths. To learn more about what the administration's plans are, you can go to whitehouse.gov/COVID plan to learn more about what's being done. Let's go to the next slide. And as a small business leader, you can get vaccinated, get your booster shot. If you have already done that, encourage your employees, family, friends, and neighbors to get vaccinated and boosted as well. For your business, create a vaccination plan for your business, review state and local vaccine policies, or seek local legal advice. consider the incentive of the paid leave tax credit if that works for you. Whether you encourage, incentivize, or mandate vaccines and boosters, you want to make sure that you're communicating this plan to your employees, both in writing and verbally. Also, continue to follow the CDC, whether to wear a mask, social distancing, and everything else that's occurring. And then finally, there are some links here to provide you with some additional resources that will make sure that you have in your emails when we send out that link tomorrow. Next slide, please. Now, without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce you, Michael Brady, the SVP for Government Affairs for Comcast. Mr. Brady leads cross-functional government affairs teams responsible for Comcast's network expansion efforts and state regulatory activities. Michael joined Comcast in 2004, serving as Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs for both the Michigan region and the Midwest division before moving to this national role. Before joining Comcast, Michael directed the Michigan Municipal League lobbying and grassroots effort and served as SVP and General Counsel of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. In private practice, Michael represented the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. And with that, we're so excited to have Mr. Brady here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Renee. I'm excited to be here and really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you. Words cannot describe how important this moment is because Comcast, I think, is synonymous as we talk with broadband. I think pretty much everybody in the world thinks of Comcast when they think of their internet provider. So before we hop into all of that, if you could just remind us who Comcast is, because there might be a few people who may not know, and why Comcast is center of the conversation about broadband access.
Yeah, thank you again. I mean, I think the reason we're the center of the conversation about broadband is because of our experience building broadband networks, because of our scale. Like you said, a lot of people are already customers, but a lot of people aren't. And the nation is moving to close the digital divide. We think we can be part of that solution. We're obviously large. We're the largest converged IP network, passing over 60 million homes and businesses. Last year alone, we invested $4.2 billion to strengthen and evolve our network in the US. And from Main Street to Wall Street, more businesses are powered by Comcast Business than any other provider in the country. We design solutions for businesses in retail, hospitality, food and beverage. We have the largest, fastest, reliable network, providing speeds of up to 10 gig available to small business. And we offer the most reliable 5G mobile network. So I think we're part of the discussion because we recognize how critical the importance of broadband connections are to the country's economic vitality and to the communities we serve.
Wow. I mean, the stats you just dropped, my mind exploded because to the point, a lot of people know Comcast, but there are a lot of people that don't know Comcast. And that just described it right there because people are like internet, but some people don't understand internet, broadband, 5G, and all of that. So thank you for that explanation. There's cross-functionality that's sort of needed with a for-profit business working directly with the US government to achieve something like greater broadband access. Could you tell us about some of the specific challenges and also benefits of having a company like Comcast working with the US government to deliver high-speed internet?
Sure, and that's a great question. And I think we heard from the previous speakers part of the dilemma we have. So the country did really well through the pandemic where broadband was available. In the span of 4 months, just for Comcast, you know, we locked down the country. We saw 2 years of traffic growth in just those 4 months. But because of the strategic investments in the network, in critical software, and in our people, we continued to perform exceptionally well. And at a time when prices for other goods and services are climbing, the government's data shows that the broadband price index is trending well below headline inflation. So that's the great news. Now we're operating in an environment where the administration and Congress are saying, okay, how can we share all of those benefits that we had in areas with broadband with everyone that doesn't have it yet? The country has billions of dollars available because of the efforts that were talked about earlier on the call. And those are bipartisan efforts. So led by the administration, but with bipartisan support in Congress, everybody is committed to getting everyone in the country an opportunity to get connected, and for those that have that opportunity to connect them. So we are aggressively working to serve and expand our footprint into rural areas using some of that funding. A lot of these areas may have been uneconomic in the past, they're not today. And we are mission driven on digital equity by connecting the unconnected. We launched a program called Internet Essentials in 2011. The goal was simple. We wanted to bring affordable, high-speed internet to low-income families at their homes. We connected 10 million people to the internet cumulatively in 10 years. And we're now doubling down on that with something called Project Up, which is our $1 billion commitment to connect people to the internet, advanced economic mobility, and open doors for the next generation. And these connections make a huge difference, not only to the individuals, but to the economy. A study published by the American Economic Journal found that Internet Essentials availability increased employment rates, earnings, drove greater labor workforce participation, which we all know we need, and decreased the probability of unemployment. When we're taking that, and now we're actively participating in the FCC's Affordable Connectivity Program, we're able to amplify those results. The US government is clearly committed to expanding broadband access and adoption. Comcast can help policymakers meet those objectives if the programs are competitive and focus on connecting the largest number of people to the best possible service at the lowest cost for taxpayers as quickly as possible.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's a great thing to hear at a low cost. Because I think with inflation and with everything that's happening right now, so many of our small business owners are hit with so many costs that, they're just trying to thrive, survive. It's their only means of income. And they're just trying to make sure that they're here to survive. We just had a pandemic, we're still in it. There's another pandemic upcoming with monkeypox. And then also now we have inflation and everything else going on in the world. So it's good to hear that Comcast is thinking in that perspective. What are some of the challenges people face who don't have access to broadband? I know that's a general question, but I think it's good to uplift and highlight what people are not getting, because I think one is they can't see this webinar right now.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think we learned during COVID how critical it was that everyone can get connected to the internet. I mean, for individuals, they get expanded access to education. I mean, it was a huge challenge when everyone went home and they didn't have some of the education opportunities. Jobs. If you have access to the internet, you have access to a wider range of jobs. Healthcare, critical. And then frankly, a long list of other essential services. But the economy benefits too. There are numerous studies that show that broadband access drives GDP growth for the nation. It also adds to employment. And not surprisingly to this audience, if you have access to high-speed broadband, you lead all of those areas lead in the nation in new business formation. So businesses that are connected to the internet simply operate more efficiently and can grow faster. They have a much easier time obtaining supplies, attracting a broader, more qualified, more diverse workforce, and critical to all small businesses, gaining exposure to the largest possible base of potential customers that are going to allow them to grow their businesses.
Wow, thank you for that. I have one final question for you, because I think this is sort of like the drum roll that everybody's waiting for. What are some resources our small business owners that are on the line today can obtain and use that Comcast has for their businesses to help them thrive during this time?
Well, obviously, and this isn't a surprise, we're a really large company that is building a lot. There's a lot of opportunities for small businesses just to work directly with Comcast as we go forward, as suppliers, as vendors, and there's a lot of resources on our website to be able to do that. When it comes to connectivity, as I noted at the beginning, Comcast is already supplying more businesses than any other provider. We do have the largest and fastest and most reliable network for small businesses. We do have the most reliable 5G mobile network. We've got a huge portfolio and reach. I mean, if you're looking at your small business saying, hey, how can I connect better to other markets as the world tries to get back on its feet again with trade, we can do that. We have 50 points of presence in cities all over the world. We have extensive on-premises, but also cloud-based options offering end-to-end secure network solutions for customers. We offer advanced security. That's something that we all worry about, but we're specialists in it, on how to protect your business from cyber threats and help protect all your connected devices at your business and on the go. And we are a known trusted provider that can help customize the right solution for your company, whether that's something we fully manage or we co-manage together. One resource that I really did want to highlight and close with, though, that was created by Comcast during the pandemic to help strengthen and empower small businesses is Comcast Rise. It's part of our Project Up initiative, and we're supporting small businesses owned by people of color and women with long-term sustainable support, including grants, marketing, and technology resources. To date, we have over 9,500 recipients in 704 cities in 37 states. It's a great beginning, but there's a lot more to do. So information on all the ways that we can help small business get connected, stay connected, things like Project or Comcast Rise are all available at comcastbusiness.com. I'm assuming everybody that is seeing the webinar has access to the internet, but I do want to give a number for those that don't have great access. It's 800-501-6000. Thanks again, Renee. It's been a great opportunity.
No, thank you, Mike. We really appreciate this, and we'll make sure that everyone gets those links and the phone number as well. We truly appreciate Comcast's commitment to helping small businesses thrive during this time. Thank you. And with that, friends, we are at the end of today's webinar. If you have any SBA related questions, more particularly about any of your particular specific needs, please use answerdesk@sba.gov and send those emails there. And if you have questions about today's webinar where you would like to get a copy of whether it's the slide deck or you did not register, you're not going to get that email, you want to get the email, email us at events@publicprivatestrategies.com. And with that, we're so excited that our next webinar is coming up. It will be in 2 weeks, and we will be talking about the Office of International Trade on August 17th. So stay tuned, same time, 2 p.m. So we look forward to seeing you here for the next webinar. And with that, I hope you have a great weekend. Cheers.